The locker room door slammed shut, echoing like a gunshot in the empty space. My heart stopped as I spun around, towel slipping from my hands, leaving me exposed under the flickering fluorescent lights. Liam, my best friend since third grade, stood there, his varsity jacket slung over one shoulder, staring at me like he'd just walked into a parallel universe. I'd always known this moment would come. Not like this, not with my bare skin prickling under his gaze, but some kind of reckoning. Growing up in Willow Creek, Ohio, where the biggest event was the annual fair and everyone knew your business, I'd buried my truth deeper than the coal mines that once fueled this town. But now, in this humid, chlorine-scented locker room after swim practice, my secret felt like it was screaming from every tile. Liam, my voice cracked, barely a whisper. I scrambled for the towel, my face burning, but his eyes didn't waver. There was no judgment, just a quiet intensity that made my stomach twist. He took a step closer, his sneakers squeaking on the wet floor, and I braced myself for the inevitable: disgust, laughter, or worse, silence. Instead, he said, "Evan, why didn't you tell me?" His voice was low, almost tender, but it carried a weight that pinned me in place. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air between us crackled, thick with everything unsaid for years. Every late-night talk, every shared glance during math class, every time I'd caught myself staring too long at his crooked smile. We'd been inseparable since we were kids, building forts in the woods, sneaking beers from his dad's garage, dreaming of escaping this nowhere town. Liam was the golden boy, quarterback, prom king, the guy every girl wanted and every guy envied. I was just Evan, the quiet swimmer with too many thoughts and not enough courage. But lately, something had shifted. His jokes felt softer, his touches lingered, and I'd started to wonder if I was imagining things, or if he was seeing me differently too. I didn't know how. I finally managed, my voice barely audible over the drip of a distant showerhead. "I thought you'd hate me." The words tasted like rust, raw and jagged. Coming out to anyone in Willow Creek was like painting a target on your back. I'd seen what happened to Jamie Ruiz last year. Whispers, slurs, his family's car vandalized. I couldn't lose Liam, not when he was the only thing keeping me sane. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the cedar of his cologne mixed with the sweat of practice. "Hate you," he said, his brow furrowing like I'd just said something ridiculous. "Evan, you're my best friend. You think I'd throw that away because you're—" He trailed off, searching for the word, and my heart sank. "Gay. Say it, Liam. Just say it." But he didn't. Instead, he reached out, his hand hovering near my shoulder, like he was afraid to touch me but couldn't pull away. "I saw the way you looked at me last week," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "At the lake, when we were skipping rocks. You thought I didn't notice, but I did." My blood ran cold. The lake. That stupid, perfect day when the sun was setting, and he'd laughed so hard he fell into the water, dragging me with him. I'd stared too long, my guard down, thinking he wouldn't see. But he had. And now, here we were, in a locker room that felt like a confessional, with nowhere to hide. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my eyes fixed on the floor. "I didn't mean to make it weird. I just—" "Don't." He cut me off, his voice sharp but not angry. "Don't apologize for who you are." He took another step, and now he was close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the world. This was Liam, straight, untouchable Liam, who dated half the cheerleading squad and never once looked at me like this. Or had he? "Evan," he said, and the way he said my name felt like a lifeline and a landmine all at once. "I don't know what this means, but I know I don't want to lose you either." The words hung there, heavy and fragile, like they could shatter with one wrong move. I wanted to ask what he meant, to demand answers, but my throat was too tight. All I could do was nod, my hands trembling as I clutched the towel to my chest. The locker room, with its chipped paint and rusted lockers, felt like the edge of the world, and we were standing on it, teetering, about to fall. The silence stretched, taut as a tightrope. Liam's eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw something new in them. Uncertainty, maybe even fear, but not the kind that pushes people away. It was the kind that pulls them closer, desperate to understand. "I don't get it," he said finally, running a hand through his damp hair. "I mean, I've been thinking about that day at the lake too. About you. And it's messing with my head." His voice cracked, and I realized he was just as exposed as I was, even with his clothes on. Liam, who always had an answer, who could charm his way out of anything, was unraveling in front of me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to speak. "What do you mean, messing with your head?" My voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone braver. I stepped back, my bare feet cold against the tiles, needing space to think. But Liam didn't move. He stayed there, rooted, like he was afraid I'd bolt. "I don't know," he admitted, his hands balling into fists at his sides. I'm not." He stopped, frustrated, and I knew what he was trying to say. He wasn't gay. He wasn't supposed to feel whatever this was. But the way his eyes lingered on me, the way his breath hitched when I shifted closer, told a different story. "Liam, you don't have to figure it out right now," I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. "You don't have to be anything you're not." But even as I said it, my chest ached. I wanted him to be something, someone for me. I'd spent years shoving that want down, convincing myself it was impossible. Now, it felt like the air itself was daring me to hope. He shook his head, a small, almost bitter laugh escaping him. "That's the thing, Evan. I don't know what I am anymore. I just know I can't stop thinking about you." His words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to grab him, to shake him, to ask if he was serious or if this was some cruel cosmic joke. But his eyes were wide, unguarded, and I knew Liam didn't lie. Not to me. The locker room felt smaller now, the walls closing in as the weight of his confession settled between us. I thought of all the times I'd watched him from the sidelines, cheering at his games, laughing at his terrible jokes, pretending I didn't notice how his arm brushed mine when we sat too close. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading too much into it. But now I wasn't so sure. "Do you remember that night at the bonfire?" he asked suddenly, his voice softer now. "Junior year, after we won against Central High?" I nodded, my throat tight. How could I forget? The whole team had been there, drunk on victory and cheap beer. Liam had slung his arm around my shoulders, his face flushed, his grin brighter than the fire. I'd spent the whole night trying not to lean into him. "You said something that night," he continued, his eyes distant. "You said you'd always have my back, no matter what. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About what no matter what means." He paused, then looked at me, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. "Does it go both ways?" My heart stuttered. "Of course it does," I said, my voice raw. "Liam, I'd do anything for you." The words slipped out before I could stop them, too honest, too heavy. But they were true. I'd walk through fire for him, even if it meant burning myself to ash. He took a step closer, and now there was barely a foot between us. The air was thick, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Then why didn't you tell me?" he asked again, but this time it wasn't accusatory. It was a plea, like he was begging me to make sense of this for him. I opened my mouth, but no words came. How could I explain years of fear? Years of hiding behind fake smiles and careful distance, terrified that one wrong move would ruin everything? I was scared, I admitted finally. Not just of you, of this place, of what it'd do to us. Willow Creek wasn't kind to people like me. The church on Main Street still had a sign that read, "Love the sinner, hate the sin," and kids at school threw around slurs like they were nothing. I'd seen the way people looked at Jamie Ruiz after he came out, like he was a stain they couldn't scrub out. I couldn't bear that for Liam, for us. "I get it," Liam said, his voice quiet but firm. "But I'm not them, Evan. I'm not this town." He reached out then, his hand brushing my arm, and the contact sent a jolt through me. It was tentative, almost accidental, but it felt like a promise. or a question. I didn't know how to answer. All I knew was that Liam was standing here, closer than he'd ever been, and for the first time, I didn't want to run. The moment hung suspended, like a breath caught in winter air. Liam's hand lingered on my arm, his fingers warm against my skin, and I couldn't tell if it was an anchor or a spark. I wanted to lean into it, to close the gap between us, but fear clawed at me, whispering all the ways this could go wrong. Liam, I said, my voice barely steady, what are we doing? It wasn't just about this moment. It was about everything. The late-night texts, the way he'd started sitting closer at lunch, the glances I'd caught him stealing when he thought I wasn't looking. I'd told myself it was nothing, but now, with his hand on me and his eyes burning into mine, I couldn't pretend anymore. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped back, his hand falling away, and I felt the loss like a physical ache. He paced a few steps, his sneakers squeaking against the tiles, then stopped and turned to face me. I don't know, he admitted, his voice raw. But I can't keep acting like everything's the same. It's not. My heart pounded, a drumbeat echoing in my chest. What's not the same? I asked, even though I was terrified of the answer. I'd spent so long building walls around my feelings, convincing myself they were one-sided. But now, Liam was tearing them down, brick by brick, and I didn't know if I was ready for what lay on the other side. You, he said simply, his eyes locking onto mine. The way I see you. It's different now. He ran a hand through his hair again, a nervous habit I'd always found endearing. I don't know when it started. Maybe the lake, maybe before. But I can't stop thinking about you, Evan. And it's freaking me out. I laughed, a shaky, disbelieving sound. You're freaked out? Try being me right now. I gestured at myself, still clutching the towel like a lifeline, my bare skin a reminder of how exposed I felt in every way. I've been hiding this for years, Liam. Years. And now you're standing here saying what, exactly? He flinched, like my words had stung, but he didn't back down. I'm saying I don't know what I feel, but I know it's real. And I know I don't want to lose you over it. His voice softened, and he took a tentative step closer. Can we just figure this out together? The question hit me like a wave, pulling me under. Together. The word was a lifeline, but it was also a risk. Willow Creek wasn't a place where two guys could just figure it out. I thought of Jamie Ruiz again, of the whispers that followed him, the way his friends had drifted away. I thought of my parents, who still went to that church on Main Street, who'd probably pray for my soul if they knew. But then I looked at Liam, at the way his eyes pleaded for something I'd never dared to hope for, and I wanted to believe it was possible. Okay, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. But we have to be careful. This town, it's not safe. I didn't just mean physically. I meant the way it could chew up your heart, your dreams, your truth, and spit you out. Liam nodded, his jaw tight. I know, but I'm not letting this place decide who we are. He reached out again, this time his hand finding mine, his fingers brushing against my knuckles. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the world shifting beneath my feet. I didn't pull away. The locker room was quiet now, the distant drip of the shower the only sound. We stood there, hand in hand, two boys on the edge of something terrifying and beautiful. I didn't know what came next, but for the first time, I wasn't alone in it. Let's get out of here, Liam said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. This place gives me the creeps. He grinned, that crooked smile I'd always loved, and I couldn't help but smile back. I nodded, grabbing my clothes from the bench. As I dressed, my hands still shaking, I felt his eyes on me. Not judgmental, not mocking, but something else. Something warm. Something that made my chest ache with possibility. We left the locker room together, stepping out into the cool evening air. The parking lot was empty, the sky bruised with purples and pinks as the sun sank below the horizon. Willow Creek stretched out before us, a small, suffocating town that held our past and, maybe, our future. For the first time, I thought we might be strong enough to face it. The next few days were a blur of stolen glances and careful words. Liam and I didn't talk about the locker room, not directly, but it was there in every pause, every brush of his shoulder against mine as we walked to class. It was like we'd cracked open a door, and now we were both too scared to step through or close it. School was its own kind of battlefield. Willow Creek High was a microcosm of the town. Cliques ruled, rumors spread like wildfire, and anyone who didn't fit the mold was fair game. I'd learned to keep my head down, to blend in, but now I felt like I was wearing my secret on my skin. Every time Liam laughed too loudly or lingered too long at my locker, I braced myself for someone to notice, to say something. It was Thursday when it happened. We were in the cafeteria, sitting at our usual table with a few guys from the football team. Liam was telling a story about last week's game, his hands animated, his grin infectious. I was trying not to stare, but it was hard when he looked so alive, so untouchable. Then his knee bumped mine under the table, and he didn't pull away. My heart raced, but I kept my eyes on my tray, pretending to care about my soggy fries. "Dude, you okay?" Jake, one of Liam's teammates, leaned across the table, his eyes narrowing at me. "You are like spacing out." There was an edge to his voice, the kind that made my stomach twist. Jake was the kind of guy who'd make a gay joke without thinking twice, and I'd always been careful around him. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said quickly, forcing a smile. But Jake's eyes flicked to Liam, then back to me, and I saw the gears turning. He didn't say anything else, but the look he gave me lingered, sharp and suspicious. Liam noticed too. His grin faltered, and he changed the subject, launching into some story about a party this weekend. But under the table, his knee pressed harder against mine, a silent reassurance. I wanted to believe it was enough, but Jake's stare stuck with me for the rest of the day. After school, Liam caught up with me in the parking lot, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey," he said, falling into step beside me. "You want to grab a burger at Rosie's? Just us." His voice was casual, but his eyes were searching, like he was testing the waters. I hesitated. Rosie's Diner was a local staple, always packed with kids from school. Going there together, just the two of us, felt like tempting fate. But the way he looked at me, hopeful and a little nervous, made it impossible to say no. "Sure," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's go." Rosie's was loud and bright, the kind of place where the jukebox never stopped and the air smelled like grease and nostalgia. We slid into a booth near the back, away from the crowd, and ordered burgers and shakes. For a while, it felt like old times, just Liam and me, talking about nothing and everything, laughing over stupid stuff like the time we tried to skateboard and ended up in a ditch. But then he leaned across the table, his voice low. "Evan, about the locker room." He paused, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I meant what I said. I want to figure this out. With you. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to reach for his hand, to tell him I felt the same, but the diner felt like a fishbowl, every pair of eyes a potential threat. "Liam, we can't talk about this here," I whispered, my eyes darting to the group of kids at the counter. "Not yet." He nodded, but I saw the frustration in his eyes. "I know, but I hate this. Hiding. It's not fair." His voice was fierce, and for a moment, I saw the Liam who'd stand up to anyone, on the field, in a fight, anywhere. I wanted to believe he could stand up to Willow Creek, too, but I wasn't sure I could. We finished our food in silence, the weight of unspoken words heavy between us. As we left the diner, the neon sign casting a red glow on Liam's face, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to be us, whatever that meant, in a town that didn't want us to. By Friday, the air at school felt thicker, charged with whispers and sidelong glances. Jake's suspicion in the cafeteria hadn't stayed quiet. I overheard a few guys from the team muttering in the hallway, their words too low to catch, but their eyes fixed on me. Liam noticed too, his jaw tight as he walked me to class, his shoulder brushing mine like a shield. "We need to talk," he said after last period, pulling me aside near the gym. His voice was urgent, his eyes scanning the hallway for eavesdroppers. Not here. Meet me at the old quarry tonight. 9 o'clock. The quarry was our spot, a forgotten place on the edge of town where kids went to drink or hook up, but it was quiet on weeknights. It was where we'd gone after Liam's parents split, where I'd told him I didn't believe in God anymore, where we'd shared secrets we couldn't say anywhere else. I nodded, my throat tight. Okay. That night, I biked to the quarry under a sky heavy with stars. The air was crisp, smelling of pine and damp earth. Liam was already there, sitting on a flat rock overlooking the water-filled pit, his silhouette sharp against the moonlight. He looked up as I approached, his face softening. "You came," he said, like he'd been afraid I wouldn't. Of course I did. I sat beside him, our knees almost touching. The quarry was silent except for the occasional chirp of crickets, and for the first time all week, I felt like I could breathe. "Evan," he started, his voice low, "I'm sorry about school. Jake's an idiot," and I told him to back off, but he trailed off, his hands clenching into fists. "I hate that you have to deal with this. That we have to." I swallowed, my heart aching at the we. "It's not your fault," I said. "It's this place. It's always been like this." I thought of Jamie Ruiz again, of the way he'd left town after graduation, like he couldn't escape fast enough. I didn't want that to be us. Liam turned to me, his eyes fierce. "I don't care about this place. I care about you." He reached for my hand, his fingers lacing through mine, and the world tilted. His touch was warm, certain, and it sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the cold. "Liam," I whispered, my voice trembling, "what are we doing?" It was the same question I'd asked in the locker room, but now it felt bigger, heavier. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about what we were willing to risk. "I don't know," he admitted, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "But I know I've never felt like this about anyone. Not any girl, not anyone. Just you." His voice cracked, and I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear I'd carried for years. But there was something else too. Hope, raw and unguarded. I leaned closer, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. "I've always felt this way," I said, the words spilling out like a confession. "Since we were kids. I just never thought you'd." I couldn't finish, but I didn't need to. Liam's hand tightened around mine, and then he was leaning in, his breath warm against my cheek. The kiss was tentative at first, soft and uncertain, like we were both afraid it would break something. But then it deepened, and it was like the world fell away. The quarry, the town, the fear. There was just Liam, his lips on mine, his hand in my hair, and the overwhelming sense that this was right, even if everything else was wrong. When we pulled apart, breathless and shaking, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm not letting this go," he whispered. "I don't care what it takes." His words were a promise, but they were also a challenge. To me, to us, to Willow Creek. I nodded, my eyes stinging. "Me neither," I said, and for the first time, I believed it. The kiss changed everything. It was like we'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. At school, we were careful, too careful, maybe, keeping our distance in the halls, avoiding eye contact when others were around. But in stolen moments, like when we'd slip into an empty classroom or meet behind the bleachers, Liam's hand would find mine, and the world would feel right again. But Willow Creek was watching. By Monday, the whispers had grown louder. Jake and his buddies were at the center of it, their smirks and muttered comments following me like shadows. "Fag" was scrawled on my locker in black marker, the letters jagged and angry. I scrubbed it off before Liam saw, but my hands shook the whole time. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. He was already on edge, snapping at Jake during practice, his temper flaring in a way I'd never seen. I knew he'd confront them if he found out, and I couldn't risk what that might do to him, to us, to the fragile thing we were building. That night, we met at the quarry again. Liam was pacing when I arrived, his face drawn, his eyes stormy. "They're talking," he said without preamble. Jake and the others. They're saying stuff about you. About us. His voice was tight, like he was holding back a scream. I froze, my stomach dropping. What kind of stuff? I asked, even though I already knew. He stopped pacing, his hands clenched. They're saying you're and that I'm too close to you. That maybe he didn't finish, but the word hung between us, sharp and heavy. Gay. Let them talk, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. They don't know anything. But the words felt hollow. I knew what rumors could do in this town, how they could twist and grow until they choked you. Liam shook his head, his jaw tight. I'm not letting them hurt you, Evan. I won't. He stepped closer, his hands cupping my face, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. I meant what I said. I'm in this. All the way. I wanted to believe him, but fear was a living thing inside me, clawing at my chest. Liam, this isn't just talk, I said, my voice breaking. You know what happened to Jamie. You know what this town does to people like me. You're not Jamie, he said fiercely. And you're not alone. I'm right here. He kissed me then, hard and desperate, like he could pour his strength into me. I clung to him, my hands fisting in his jacket, wishing I could hold on to this moment forever. But the world didn't stop for us. The next day, Jake cornered me in the hallway, his buddies flanking him like bodyguards. So, Evan, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. You and Liam seem real close lately. Something you want to tell us? I froze, my heart hammering. Back off, Jake, I said, but my voice shook, betraying me. He smirked, stepping closer. Or what? Your boyfriend gonna save you? The word was a weapon, sharp and deliberate, and it cut deeper than I expected. I shoved past him, my shoulder colliding with his, and kept walking, my ears ringing. That night, I didn't go to the quarry. I couldn't face Liam, not when I felt like I was dragging him down with me. I stayed in my room, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd been wrong to hope, wondering if love was worth the cost. Liam didn't let me hide. He showed up at my house the next morning, his face pale but determined. You didn't come last night, he said, standing in my driveway, his breath visible in the cold air. Why? I wanted to lie, to say I was sick or busy, but the truth spilled out. I'm scared, Liam, I admitted, my voice barely audible. This is bigger than us. This town, it'll break us. He stepped closer, his eyes blazing. Then we leave, he said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. After graduation, we get out. Go somewhere it doesn't matter who we are. Just you and me. The words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. Leaving meant giving up everything. My family, my home, the only life I'd ever known. But staying meant giving up Liam, and I wasn't sure I could do that either. I don't know if I'm strong enough, I said, my voice cracking. Not like you. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip firm but gentle. You are, he said. You've been carrying this alone for years, Evan. You're the strongest person I know. His voice softened, and he pulled me into a hug, his arms tight around me. We'll do this together. I promise. Graduation was 3 months away, an eternity and a heartbeat all at once. We made a plan. Keep our heads down, avoid Jake and his crew, save every penny we could. Liam started talking about colleges in bigger cities, places where we could be ourselves without looking over our shoulders. It felt like a dream, but for the first time, I let myself believe in it. The weeks that followed weren't easy. The rumors didn't stop, and Jake's taunts grew bolder, but Liam was always there, his presence a quiet strength. We found moments of joy too, late nights at the quarry, stolen kisses in his car, plans whispered under the stars. Each one felt like a rebellion, a middle finger to Willow Creek and its small-minded hate. When graduation day came, we stood together in our caps and gowns, the future stretching out before us. Liam squeezed my hand under the folds of his robe, a secret promise no one else could see. As we threw our caps into the air, I felt lighter than I ever had, like I was finally free. We left Willow Creek that summer, driving west with nothing but a beat-up car and a duffel bag of dreams. The road was long, and the world wasn't perfect, but we had each other. And as I looked at Liam, his hand on the wheel and his crooked smile lighting up the dashboard, I knew that was enough. We'd been caught naked in more ways than one, stripped bare by a town that didn't understand, by a love that didn't fit its rules. But what happened after left me shaking, not with fear, but with hope, with the certainty that, together, we could face anything.